Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Mirko. I'm sitting in as the host today here on Give On Live. So here we go. This is our Wirecard Debacle show. We're going to talk about obviously that news that's erupted across the fintech and financial ecosystem over the past week or so about Wirecard in Germany. This missing 2 billion that has now caused ripple effects, not only across traditional finance, but also across crypto, as well as Wirecard, one of their businesses, provides some of the most, I guess, prolific card systems within the crypto sphere, mainly Crypto.com and several other companies as well. So we're going to touch on that. Make sure you subscribe here for Digecon Live. Very important that we get everybody's support, which we're building a community here, a community of like-minded individuals. And the more like-minded individuals we have, well, the better content we can provide, and the more well we can speak to you guys and just have a good time educating, learning amongst ourselves and to a broader audience. So you should be watching us here on YouTube. I think in the next couple of weeks we'll start streaming out to multiple platforms, so keep your eye on that. But definitely make sure you subscribe here, give us a thumbs up. All it does is help us provide better content. So yeah, we're gonna have a discussion today with a special guest, Daniel Goldman, from Ternio. He's going to join us here shortly. Until then, I guess I can start off by giving you just a bit of background on this whole Wirecard situation. So I myself am in the crypto sphere. I run a company called CoinMetro. I do AMAs every week, and on those AMAs, I frequently get news that I get to comment on. This is definitely one of them. So Wirecard, it's actually the first company in the history of the DAX, which is the German stock market, to default, to basically just go into liquidation. The stock, after the news that there was 2 billion missing off the books, tanked, I think initially 80%. Their market cap went from 24 billion to 4 billion almost instantly. And yeah, 2 billion missing on the books. CEO was subsequently arrested, then bailed out for 5 million euros worth of bail. And now, also subsequent to that, almost, I would say within 48 hours of that news, the cards that are tied to, so Wirecard has 3 companies, right? 3 main divisions. They have a bank in Germany, a regulated bank. That bank mainly issues loans to its merchants. Merchants are one of their other branches, which actually provides processing, credit card processing, is one of the biggest credit card processors in Europe. So that their banking division generally provide loans out to merchants based on the amount of money they were processing through their system, amount of credit card processing they were doing. And then they have a third entity which does issuing. So they actually create, debit cards, those white label debit cards you've seen at many companies, so that companies can provide their own debit cards to their clients. So essentially what happened is that the holding company came up 2 billion short. EY, one of the big four audit firms, found out or couldn't find this 2 billion in cash. They actually hadn't asked for audited financial reports from banks from the company for 3 years, which is quite amazing. A big fault on EY for sure. So that led to essentially a big issue, right? 2 billion missing. We had about 48 hours after the announcement, you had all the debit card programs tied to Wirecard, and there are hundreds, if not even maybe into the thousands, but there's definitely hundreds of programs tied to Wirecard, were shut down. People couldn't get access to their funds, their debit cards didn't work, et cetera. This included companies like Crypto.com here in the crypto sphere. They've actually now activated those cards again to allow clients to use them. However, the company itself is permitted to operate. Their UK subsidiary, which does the issuing, has been permitted to operate, but they cannot move company-owned funds, and they are restricted to the types of activities and the type of accounts where they can hold client funds. Thus, the regulator has put strict controls on them to make sure that there is no more, a couple billion lost from here or there or whatever during day-to-day operations. So good news for the customers. And I see we have Daniel, I think, is joining. So that's good. So good news for the customers for Wirecard. Not so good, though, in terms of everything else that has happened over the past week or so in terms of effect on the overall market. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Good. I'm so sorry I had technical difficulties.
Not a problem. Everybody's aware. Everybody always has technical difficulties. That's especially when you're a tech guy. It's like when you do a presentation and something doesn't work.
That's true. I hate that. So anyway, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, not a problem. So I was just talking a bit about the Wirecard situation, but I'll let you introduce yourself, your company a bit, Ternio. Let us know what you do, what you're working on, and then we'll jump into this Wirecard discussion.
Well, the Wirecard thing actually was relevant to us because some of our competitors were using Wirecard in Europe, and we're effectively, we're a blockchain enterprise company that does fintech. We give people access to debit cards, bank accounts that you can buy and sell cryptocurrency. We're live in the United States with a Visa card that you can spend crypto. We're going live in Europe with a MasterCard, and also globally with several features. So we're working on some amazing stuff. We're basically bridging the crypto universe and the traditional fintech and banking universe, and we're kind of making those two things interoperable. That's effectively our role.
Okay. So I heard you guys just finished a 1 million crowd fundraise, I think, on Republic, right?
Yeah, we oversubscribed that. So it's awesome when you have people who believe in you and who understand the product, who understand the value, and they've been maybe following us for a year or 2 years. They know that we've always kept our promises and that we're not full of shit. And it's nice to have anytime you oversubscribe on your round, it's a very validating feeling.
Sure. Yeah. Better than being undersubscribed, right? For sure.
It is. Needless to say.
Yeah. So congratulations on that. I think I've been through the fundraising rounds. I don't know how many times in my career too. So I've been on both sides of that, undersubscribed, oversubscribed, and there's definitely different feelings involved. So congratulations on the undersubscription.
True, thank you.
So yeah, let's tie in a bit of Wirecard here. So obviously you guys, I guess, are not using Wirecard in Europe. That'd be my
No,
assumption.
we're not. So when we go live in Europe soon, no, Wirecard is not involved. Exactly.
Yeah. Very, very good. Very good. So, so I was just talking about the news. So obviously this broke, you remember the day it broke? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Thursday. It was Thursday.
Okay. So Thursday last week obviously broke. I think subsequent to that Friday or Saturday, it was quite quick that the CEO was subsequently arrested and then released on bond.
Good.
Of course, released almost immediately on 5 million bonds. I mean, when you have 2 billion missing from your company, how hard is it to come up with 5 million, right? But so yeah, subsequently released on bond. Then subsequent to that, cards were locked. So I was just explaining a bit the way Wirecard is structured. So there's actually 3 companies in the mix. The company that was actually missing the funds is their holding company. The holding company then tied to the bank. The bank, the Wirecard AG Bank, essentially just issues loans to merchant clients of theirs that use their processing platform. Yeah. So essentially, if you do a lot of processing with Wirecard, they would offer you loans based on, 30% of your processing on a month-to-month basis, whatever. And then they have another company in the UK that does their issuing, which is their debit card issuing, which is what most people have been talking about. And then they have their acquiring company, which is one of the biggest acquirers in Europe, so credit card processing.
Yep. Traditional. That's pretty traditional for a payment processor. And they also had a subsidiary out of Singapore, or that did their
US
Singapore operations.
Yeah. Like most, Singapore regulations are quite, I mean, I don't think you need a license up to 30 million worth of stored value cards, right? Which obviously Wirecard had way more than 30 million. So it makes a big difference for them. So yeah, just kind of talking about, I think from a high level, I think people understand 2 billion worth of fraud sounds pretty bad. But from a more kind of granular level, how do you see this affecting, not even just crypto alone, but how do you see it affecting, I mean, just the entire sphere of regulated enterprises, fintech in general? Where do you think we're going to see the biggest reverberations?
Well, it's interesting because this is where, I got a couple thoughts. So number one, think about what happened with Wavecrest in Europe with all the Visa cards, and they went down, right? So anybody who knows and follows, that was a total debacle because you had several different card companies, but frankly, they were abusing the rules. The way that it operates, Visa and MasterCard operate because banks make a lot of money, is that you can only provide issuance to people, residents of certain countries based upon where the bank is allowed to operate. Let me give an example. We have a Visa card. We're in the United States. That Visa card works anywhere in the world. We have people going to Egypt at the pyramids, swiping and getting cash out of Ghana. We got people in Panama. I was in Panama, all over the world. But you can only get access to our card as an American resident. You can't be in Brazil and get access to it. You can't be in Mexico and get access to it. It'd be our bank is only authorized, you know, a union. So there's like this framework legally. So now you have access to more and more countries across Europe. But what was happening with Wavecrest back in the day was they were issuing to people in Brazil. They had no legal authority to issue Visa cards to people in Brazil, and they were breaking the rules. And so everybody got shut down. So like, okay, bad. So fast forward. In this case, it had nothing to do with the crypto element, but there were many, and they just got, I guess the FCA, which is the regulatory body out of London, who we're also in the process of applying for a license with them right now, because we're going to Europe. The FCA just enabled people to have their cards turned back on, which is a fairly important thing. But there were, I think, 4 crypto card companies that were affected by, some significantly, some less so, by the Wirecard fraud. And so to the greater question around, okay, well, how does this really impact things? This happens all the time, whether it's an Enron scenario or whether it be a Wirecard scenario. The truth is, you basically have, this is where that trust function, that trust element you always hear about in crypto and blockchain is like trustless. Like they said they had $2 billion that they did not have. Now, maybe it was just, maybe it was just paper fraud in order to, and they defrauded stockholders or shareholders because they looked like their books were better, or maybe it was somebody that defrauded a shareholder, or they defrauded a card holder with, you know, one of those 2 people were defrauded. And the problem is it's just a centralized thing. There is no actual, like, you're not owning your own asset. And I think that the future down the line will basically be that people will be able to custody their own money. They'll be their own bank. You don't need a bank to be able to tell you what to do with your own wallet. You control your own wallet. It has its own negatives with that. Like, I lost my key, I lost my money. You know, like, so maybe not great for everybody. Maybe grandma should use a bank, but it is one of those scenarios where you do have a company like engineering on the books, and then, sorry, government has to bail us out or the whole thing gets wiped out. Anyway, I don't know if my internet connection is bad or not.
There is a bit, we had a few drop-offs, but I think I picked up most of what you said. I think I would hope everybody else did as well. Just to underscore that a bit, I think, you know, from a high level, obviously, well, it's easy to blame Wirecard, right? Because I think when you dig in a little bit, I don't know yet if they can, I don't know yet if 2 billion was stolen, right, i.e. fraud, or the fraud was simply that, like you said, paper fraud, where it's, look, we need to we want our shareholding price to go higher. We want to get loans. So we're going to go ahead and manufacture some fake money so that we can get collateralized loans. And I think that,
somebody got defrauded. Yeah.
So I guess from a crypto, you can kind of maybe think of Tether in a certain way. Tether's kind of like, nobody knows really what backs Tether. Tether seems like a huge company. There might be nothing backing it. EY hasn't looked at Tether, and they probably never will. But if they do, I'm sure they'd find something, you know, relatively similar in the books, if there is any books at the Tether.
But no, Tether's the perfect example. Tether's the perfect example of, Tether is, look, how do I not defame Tether?
It's pretty difficult, man.
It's really difficult. Tether certainly demonstrates significant concern in my mind, because when I talk to people about cryptocurrency, I always say, well, do you know what the world's number one most traded cryptocurrency is? And they all think it's Bitcoin, but they're like, I know it's not Bitcoin because it's such an obvious answer that it can't be Bitcoin. And I'm like, that's right, it's not Bitcoin. The most traded cryptocurrency in the world is the digital dollar. Now, that's in many forms, but the most popular is Tether. And Tether is fractional reserve. And if Tether, and this is a big if because they make a lot of money, but if Tether were to go under, it would be a cataclysmic event of just, I cannot explain the nuclear reaction that would happen within the cryptocurrency community and what it would do to BTC and everything else. We're talking about billions of dollars just going down the tubes. Now, that may not ever happen, but it would be a disaster. And I do think of Tether in the same vein as I think of Wirecard. I think they're the same thing.
I think when to go on like let's say a larger picture of that, crypto being a trustless system, and the whole goal of kind of getting into a tokenized realm is that you no longer need that trusted third party,
Right.
which in many cases, like we see now, and many other instances of this in the past, and we'll see instances of this in the future, where that trusted third party generally shouldn't be trusted. But the question remains that, regulation as it is now is based on trust.
Yes,
So
100%.
So even though that trust is broken all the time, the main kind of building blocks of regulation is trust. So I know that I've talked to lots of regulators, and trying to get them to understand or put faith behind a trustless system in a system built completely on trust can be quite difficult. But I think one of the things that I view out of this whole debacle, I think the worst thing for us, and I'm in the crypto industry as well, so the worst thing for a very similar, everything's kind of similar. So Ternio, what we do, very similar, right? So I think the one of the biggest concerns for me, and I'll see if you echo the same sentiment here, is that I look at things like EY, right? So EY was doing the books on Wirecard for 3 years. And in that time, they never asked for bank records to correspond to the numbers they were getting from Wirecard. They just took them on face value.
You had one job.
Yeah. So now here's the thing: regulation built on trust. The big four, in terms of regulation, are kind of like, those are the guys they trust. That's part of this trust system that
they are the trust system. They are the trust system. You've been audited by the trusted, and that's, by the way, how Enron got away with all that shit.
Exactly.
Enron had the same thing, and that's actually what led to the breaking up of I forget if it was Arthur Anderson or whatever it was, but literally Enron took down the trusted accounting firm, and it got broken up into 4 different parts because of Enron.
So now we have, I guess human beings, right? We have an attention span that lasts about 7 seconds. Yeah. So every time something like this happens, it's always, this time's going to be different. Oh, this time things will change. I hate to say it, I don't think things will change, but what I do think will happen, we're at kind of this, let's say, I don't know, almost climactic point with crypto in terms of how regulators are looking at it. More and more regulators are opening up. Banks have started to open up. Financial intermediaries have started to open up.
Yes.
Now we get a situation where a company that has nothing to do with crypto, other than the fact that they issued cards to crypto companies. Right?
It's not a crypto problem. It's just,
It's not, but let's see what happens with the spin. Because my worst fear is that Wirecard, not to Wirecard themselves, but newspapers, media, blogs, et cetera, online, regulators even, come and say, there was, they'll find the needle in the haystack when it comes to some crypto provider that that provided documentation to open an account with Wirecard that may have not been, let's say, on the up and up.
I'm honestly not worried about that at all. I'm really not.
Okay.
I'm not. Because there is no intellectually honest discussion that can be had there. The fraud was perpetrated by the CEO, probably CFO. The board was at best negligent, if not criminal, and none of that had anything to do with cryptocurrency. And I don't think that in this point, the die is cast, so to speak. The narrative has been written, and none of that so far has had to do with crypto. So now it's just about, okay, what is the FCA going to allow for in terms of ensuring that people don't get screwed? And that's what they're kind of playing.
And do you think that repercussion on the regulatory side is going to lead to kind of a backpedaling of regulators being accepted towards crypto as a high risk kind of alternative to traditional finance? Or is it, no?
I don't think it's a crypto problem at all. I don't think it's the only thing it could potentially do is that it's a small number of banks and payment processors, although growing, but it's a small number of institutions that are willing to work with crypto companies. So we recently saw JP Morgan Chase is now, they pick good clients, right? So they got Coinbase, they got Gemini, I think. But basically, those are 2 very highly credible. They've got a lot of money. They got compliance locked down with their licenses. If you're going to do business with a crypto company, those are 2 pretty damn good companies, right? When it comes to from an institutional perspective. But if you're a startup and you have, let's say you have your own cryptocurrency, or whatever you're an exchange or whatever, it's really hard to find a banking partner. It's a small number. So I think that the net result is that you have in Europe one less potential partner who's willing to operate with cryptocurrency. I don't think it's going to make anyone shy away from doing cryptocurrency. I just think that if you were already taking cryptocurrency, then that's a small bucket, and everybody else still feels the same way they did before. So you just have one less option if you're a crypto company, in my opinion.
Yeah. I generally think you're right. I've seen so many occasions. I come from the FX industry, and I started out in FX when it was unregulated, 97, 98. And the path that unregulated FX follows, or the path that unregulated crypto followed unregulated FX, it's like 1-to-1. It's the most correlated trade you've ever seen in your life.
I completely believe that.
Yeah. And so now, and what happened with regulated FX was essentially that, it was a scam. Don't invest in FX. Then they tried to regulate. Then they regulated slowly. Then they regulated a lot. And then anything that happened, indirect or direct, related to FX trading, caused the regulator to take 10 steps back. So, for instance, leverage, the whole leverage debate about more leverage is higher risk.
Yep.
In reality, a retail trader that's going to lose his money will lose it at 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 7-to-1, or 100-to-1, and they don't lose it any quicker. And the negligible effect on negative balance is quite small, depending on how the broker themselves manages the risk. So what my kind of fear is that this kind of bubbles over. And again, it's very indirect, because obviously from Wirecard perspective, the problem is what I see in the media, crypto media, is there's this heavy influence because of the 2 or 3 or 4 programs that Wirecard was behind in crypto being the biggest programs in crypto.
Yeah.
There's kind of like this, at least I think from a public perspective, there's a relation now between maybe crypto and Wirecard, even though there really isn't any real crossover,
I think it's just like, look, those guys are like, those 4 companies in Europe, it's the same problem. It's like everything was on Wavecrest, and it took a deep dive, took forever to get back. We're going into Europe. Blockcard is doing great in the US, and we're expanding to Europe. And I just think that it'll be interesting to see what happens to those. I think there's like 4 of them that how quickly they'll be able to regain their footing. What happens? Okay, so the FCA just turned on the cards again. Okay. Yep. But what's next? Does that mean that they need to find an alternative in the future? Do they have 6 months? I don't know. You don't want consumers to be harmed in any way, shape, or form. But if I'm one of anybody, name any fintech company using Wirecard's payment processor, then I'm probably looking for an alternative right now, no matter what.
Let's talk about that. So I know of a few alternatives. I know I had a discussion on Telegram with somebody that said, "Oh, Qantas is the only option for," and that's not true.
Not true at all. And by the way, not a fan of Qantas, but just go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm not a big fan of Qantas either. So we share that. But so outside of Qantas, I know obviously I don't know, Terno, maybe you guys have NDAs. You can't mention who you work with particularly. Yeah. But for the B2B guys who might be listening, for the guys who run exchanges, for the guys who have a card program that are now kind of either were in a process with Wirecard and now said, okay, I'm not going that route, or we're thinking about it. What alternatives are there out there aside from Wirecard?
That's something I'm never going to tell anybody. That's a competitive advantage for me. But because we white label, we're doing like a partnership with Litecoin. So the Litecoin card in Europe, that'll be from Kernio. It won't be the block card. We white label. I would say that there are a few. Qantas is one of them, but we didn't like their terms. What we found is that whether it be Europe, or there's a few around the world that will play with crypto, but what they want to do are the terms we've seen from different companies are so jacked up. It's supply and demand.
Yeah.
It's supply and demand.
And they're completely different from one company to another for the most part.
And let me give you an example. I'll give you one example. Okay. Be delicate in how I say this. So we're connected to 4 banks, 1 in Europe and 3 in the US in terms of our systems, either currently or in process. We're actually actively connecting via APIs. And one of the banks, their normal rates for wires are like $25 for a wire. And our rate with that bank is $75. Why? Because we deal in crypto. Yep. Why? Because they think they can. Now, luckily for me, we happen to have, I've been with a bank, one of the biggest banks in the world for, I'm 42, been over 20 years, I've been a customer. I've run millions and millions and millions of dollars in business through this bank, okay? I am, whatever they got, I'm a VIP of it, okay? And so we're like, well, we're not gonna pay $75 a wire just because you think you can, give us the Bill Cosby treatment. So, sorry. So we're gonna continue to use the bank that, by the way, most crypto companies can't get access to. Yep. Because I happen to have a special relationship with the bank, and so thus I bring that in with premium. And so I'd say that what you see with the Qantas or another, what I see is the supply and demand is off. So the terms I've seen are like, let me give you an example from one in Southeast Asia. We wanted to get access to Japan and Hong Kong and all these other places, and they would charge us, which we would have to pass on to the consumer. For every deposit, 1% of every deposit would go directly to them. Now that means that I have to charge the customer for myself for a profit plus their 1% plus other fees. I just told them to get lost, like, not going to work. So what we're working on doing is building and making sure that whatever deals we do are going to be the fairest possible deals we can, built for long-term success that would be beneficial to the consumer. And if we have to wait a little bit longer and we have to hustle and talk to another bank or another, whoever we got to talk to, we will be shaking down trees until we get to a point where we say, okay, this is a fair deal for consumers. And that's really my job, is to make sure that we can give geographical reach. And by the way, like I can tell you right now, there's going to be almost like a renaissance, and I hope we're the one leading it, but in different ways, different people around the world, different companies around the world will be leading this renaissance when it comes to this sort of fintech solutions with crypto. And I see it clear as day, and the stuff that we have planned is going to be like amazing. And I know that I hear about some of the stuff that other people are doing. It's going to be a really fun time with the next couple of years, watching the industry grow and seeing people compete and to try to come out with more innovative solutions.
Yeah, I agreed. I think that obviously the tokenization of money and digital dollars, digital euros, CBDC, all these things will actually pull us away from these type of frauds, from individual companies that are able to hold money of others on their books and do whatever they want and get loans on other people's money and all these great things. So great things for them, not so much for us, the consumer.
It's an easy thing to track. I mean, how hard is it for EY to track a digital wallet that is on its face absolutely verified? I mean, you don't have a bank in its own way. You say, well, this is a piece of paper. They have these fraudulent papers from Wirecard, signed and stamped and notarized, but that's the verification. But all that you'll have to do in the future is literally look at the wallet, and the wallet, you're going to know it's not counterfeit. Yeah. You don't have counterfeit Bitcoin. Now you might have Bitcoin gold, and maybe people buy Bitcoin gold or whatever, thinking, as a naive person, that's Bitcoin. I don't know, but we know that a Bitcoin wallet only holds Bitcoin. And so if I have that address and I verify that as a Bitcoin wallet, then I know how much Bitcoin is in that wallet. So if there's a Wirecard or name your company that has requirement of certain assets, custodied, then it is physically in the wallet. Now, the problem with, like you bring up the Tether situation, problem is Tether is not like Bitcoin in that it's a commodity that's digital. It is supposedly backed by dollars. That's the problem. The problem is you're saying, okay, well, there's this many, $4 billion, and then they claim to have, X amount plus credit. They're not, if they're not 1-to-1 in dollars, 1-to-1, then that's a huge problem. And then they're running a fractional reserve system, and it's on top of a fractional reserve system, and it's going to blow up in a disastrous way.
Yeah. That's my, in terms of crypto in general, I think the Tether scenario is probably the one that goes through most people's minds that have any experience in traditional finance, never mind crypto itself. So we have Erica, I think, that has a question. She's actually coming on here live with us here in a second. So she'll ask her question once she's able to come in. We'll give her a second to get situated. But just to continue with the chat, just to let everybody know that's watching, you can always ask questions on YouTube. You can come join us here on Zoom if you're lucky enough to have the link, and chat with us here as well. And we'll try to answer your questions. We'll see if Daniel can answer some. I'll try to answer some if I can as well, depending on the topic at hand. So anyway, Erica, I think, is coming from the Blockchain Center in Miami. So we'll give her a second to get ready, and then she'll come in with a question. So
there she is.
There she is.
Hey.
I think she's muted. Let's see. Can she?
Me?
There you go, Erica. Okay, go right ahead. Ask your question.
How are you guys doing today?
Good. Hey.
Good, not
I
bad.
yeah, I guess my question is, there's a lot of people that are worried, right? I mean, you guys made a really good point. I've been listening for a little bit. You made a good. Christiana's calling me. Anyways, you made a good point about the people that are already in crypto. They already understand this system. This means nothing to them, right? The fact that Wirecard is doing fraudulent stuff, maybe on accident, maybe not on accident. So I guess my question is like, how can we get more people who are on this one-track mind that Bitcoin is an asset for people that are money launderers? You know, how do we get that message out more? That it's that is a wrong statement.
I find it interesting because I already live in the bubble that knows that Bitcoin is not. I mean, yeah, do people use it to launder money? Yeah, but they use banks to launder money. They use art and diamonds to launder money. I mean, laundering money is not a specific use case only for Bitcoin. And I always think of it as I find it interesting when I do meet people who have nothing to do with Bitcoin at all, and they say, the thing with Bitcoin is you just got to get rid of that taint that exists. I'm like, what taint? Like, there's no taint. This is a beautiful, wonderful technology. And I think the way you do that is I think you start to get into specifics to say, okay, let's talk about it for a second. First of all, you can track every single transaction from the dawn of time, from Genesis on Bitcoin network. You can use existing, not in the future, but today, you can use existing third-party analytics services that can track whether or not money has been obfuscated. You can literally identify behaviors in real time using artificial intelligence and existing technology that the FBI, the NSA, other government regulators are using today that works, that they used to catch pedophile ring in Asia because these people thought they could somehow get away with it with Bitcoin when they didn't realize it's actually not anonymous. It's like pseudo.
It's pseudonymous, yeah.
Exactly.
What I tell people is like, I think chain analysis. I think in 2017, 90+% of their profits came from the FBI and CIA. So it's like,
So I'll give you some. I use chain analysis, right, every day.
Uh-huh.
So I think that, look, I drive a car. I heard yesterday somebody robbed a bank and drove away in a car. So I guess I should give my car up because it got tied to criminal activity because cars are used in criminal activity. I think that the problem is when people don't understand things, they accept anything as the truth.
Yeah.
So is Bitcoin, to Daniel's point, do some people try, and usually ineffectively, to launder money? You know how difficult it is to launder money through Bitcoin? I mean, seriously. Not only do you need the technical knowledge to be able to figure out how to obfuscate your transactions, you also need to understand the flow of money, how to get the money. You're still eventually getting into some type of physical, tangible value, store of value, right? Whether it's going to be diamonds, gold, whatever. You have to go through a gateway to get there. You have to. It's so much more easier to launder cash. I mean, seriously, if you're a money launderer, cash is pretty easy to launder.
It's anonymous, as opposed to everything is tracked on a public chain.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think that, the first time I talked to regulators about Bitcoin specifically was 2016. And in 2016, every regulator I talked to, and this was in the US, it was in Australia, it was in the UK, it was in other parts of Europe, it was even in Latin America. Every single one said the same thing. The blockchain, that's some cool. That could be cool. That could be good. But Bitcoin, no,
Yeah.
Because the criminal activity. And the point is that, first of all, you can't really separate the two.
You can't separate the virtual currency element from the blockchain. I would say you could separate Bitcoin from the blockchain, but not necessarily.
What I mean is Bitcoin itself functions on the Bitcoin network, which we all now call blockchain.
Oh yeah, on the Bitcoin blockchain, yeah.
And blockchain itself, the only reason anybody's talking about blockchain
is because of Bitcoin.
Is because of Bitcoin.
It's
right?
100% right. Sure.
And it's so frustrating because you have all of these enterprise blockchains coming in and the digital dollar and the CBDC, and they all talk about, Bitcoin, this technology that increases transparency and it decreases the need to trust and it increases efficiencies and it increases, safety and security. And it's like, that is the Bitcoin blockchain. Okay. That is not every single blockchain that comes onto the scene. So it's really frustrating because I feel like sometimes they're taking the messaging that I put out that hey, this is a great innovation in technology. This is not just a new form of money. It's a new payment channel that people can use. And they're taking that messaging and people hear that and they think, oh, well, we can apply that to any blockchain. And so when you see these CBDCs come out, I mean, exactly what you said, Daniel, when you said like, what's the most widely used digital currency? I mean, I'm going to say it's the yuan, right? Like it could be it's already digital, like $60 trillion is the world's money supply and 8% of that is in actual physical cash. So it's just frustrating because I see our messaging being co-opted and then being able to implement some blockchain technology, and they're going to say, put your identity on the blockchain and it's way secure. And it's like, this is a private blockchain. You just gave me all my identity, like you made me give all of my identity into it. And I have no control over where this is going. So, I mean, it's very true that, you know, cash is the best way to launder money. But like, how do we change this narrative on a public scope? Because even today, even though you have all these financial institutions that are doing things with crypto, you still get people saying this is just money for the Silk Road.
I think we put some weight behind the FATF and all these organizations because we have to deal with them in the industry. But the average Joe and Jane on the street have no idea who the FATF is. And when they see it in the Wall Street Journal, they don't read it. So Digecon Live, that's how communities, outreach. You know, the problem with crypto since the beginning is the guys with the soapbox shouldn't have the soapbox, right? Yeah. The John McAfee's and, you know, and people like shouldn't be the guys that everybody looks to for information, guidance, etc. So the problem is a lot of the guys that have the best things to say aren't necessarily the most public or influential people on crypto social media, right? So I think, you know, and Digicon can do something maybe to help change that, giving people a soapbox that actually should be listened to, people that actually have experience that can actually speak from real experience of dealing both in traditional finance and crypto as well. And even, you know, from a technology standpoint, I think when you don't understand something, you know, I'll give you an example. If I'm at a gas station and, you know, I'm with my mother, let's say, and we're at a gas station and the car doesn't work, she'll ask the guy that's pumping the gas, hey, could you take a look at the engine? Because, you know, he's at a gas station. He should know how a car works. You know, like he should know the engine. He should be able to fix this thing in a minute. This is where he works. And I think that people have this general perception that if someone's talking about something or, you know, they're on crypto Twitter, they put a hashtag or a hashtag somewhere, they must know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's very true.
And that's generally not, you know, there's no way to value somebody's actual knowledge on Twitter. It's not like you have like a meter that says this guy's an idiot, this guy's smart, that doesn't exist, unfortunately. So
there's a lot of bullshit in crypto. And I always hate it when people start talking about to the moon, or when I hear somebody say Bitcoin, $100,000, it's like, man, like people are just taking advantage of people. There's just like a lot of, and these are people who come across as being like legitimate within the space, or they've been in the space for a long time. And it makes my eyes want to bleed. It's brutal.
So to try to take this back to Wirecard for a bit, let's see. So just full transparency. So I won't give the name. I'm not here to promote my business, but I have a business as well. It's in the crypto sphere. We have cards and IBANs and all this great stuff as well, right? So I always ask myself, the question I ask myself is, now for me, I wish I could take debit cards, light them on fire and throw them, you know, it's the reason why we offer these things, or in my mind, the reason we offer these things is because sometimes you got to take a step backward to go forward, and people understand how they work. And it gets them to use a technology they're unsure of, or maybe they don't quite necessarily get. It's AOL, you know, it's the AOL times, you know, back on the internet, 94, 95. My mom wasn't on the internet. AOL came out, everybody got on the internet. It sucked, but everybody got on it because it was easy, right? And so we need an AOL moment. And part of doing that is to get people to use the technology, and telling them they need a key. They have to remember some crazy key, a bunch of 24 words randomly on a napkin that you're going to lose, you know, all this nonsense is not going to get them into. So debit cards help. Agreed. They help. So the question is, we all talk about Wirecard here and how, you know, oh man, these guys it's all centralized. You shouldn't do so, but we're also selling similar products, right? So what do you feel, Daniel, is kind of the next step in this kind of expansion? So you go from debit cards, offering kind of traditional financial services, bringing in crypto. What's the end goal of that? Like, what does the end goal look like? What is the?
It's a really good question. You're right. I mean, like what we offer are effectively centralized services, and so what's different? I think we're like the gateway drug into where the future needs to be. I'm a big believer that you got to have something that's comfortable and easy that people understand. In the United States, I can tell you that people like to swipe cards. Now in China, it's different. The card is gone out of the equation. And like Erica was talking about, like most people don't realize that the banking system is already digital money anyway. Most of it, very little of it's in cash. The difference between blockchain money, crypto money, and the banking system money is that the only way to get the money out of the banking system today is through cash. You cannot custody your own digital money. There's always a custodian on your behalf. And really the only difference is with crypto, you can become your own custodian if you wish to, right? And that's where the interoperability comes in. And I think if you think of blockchain effectively as a peer-to-peer technology, then in 10 years from now, or we'll name the date, at some point, there will be, through technological improvements, I mean, it'll probably never happen with Bitcoin. I'm not, maybe Lightning Network will blow my mind, but I'm not expecting that. I always think of Bitcoin as like a savings, right? It's the investment toward the future as opposed to a payment network. I don't think it's well suited for payments.
Yeah, no, it's not.
It's not efficient. There's a lot of reasons why it's not, but it's great for an investment perspective at holding money, holding value. And so I think of the future as like, okay, will there come a day where a Kroger in the United States or a Walmart will be willing to accept digital money? And I think, yeah, because now they're cutting out an unnecessary intermediaries, multiple payment processors, maybe block cards. So I have to innovate and come up with new value offers for people for it to be worth anything. And that's going to bring Walmart directly to the customer, right, like that. And as soon as, but today it doesn't make sense for Walmart, because even if Walmart started to accept cryptocurrencies today, I mean, they're making billions of dollars. I mean, like, they're the largest retailer in the world. They're making, I don't know how, hundreds of billions of dollars in revenues. What are they going to get from that? They're going to get nothing. You would not see nothing on their balance sheet. It was zero impact whatsoever.
But you know what? But to put a point on, like, this is like the debate between centralized and decentralized. But if they use CBDCs or digital dollars or digital yuan to transact and move money cross-border to settle invoices in China for the distributors that are moving their products, they can save tons of money.
Well, that's what's happening now. So to your point, So it's like different use cases, different solutions. We know blockchain is well suited for cross-border remittances. I see it. I think there are other things that work for it as well. But I think that, so technology companies like us have to basically be able to innovate and solve a problem that exists. And in this moment, we're solving a problem. And in 5 or 10 years, where you have a peer-to-peer technology that's going to bring people together where they may or may not need that technology service, then we're going to have to, technology companies have to reiterate on what does that look like.
I think the point is, when you can use crypto, when I say crypto, I mean broader, just digitalized, tokenized, anything. When you can use crypto without knowing you're using crypto, that's called mass adoption. So so Vishal, we have a question from Vishal. I don't know what country. Anyway, but how big will cryptocurrency become in 5 years? So
I think what you just said is really important, because I say that all the time. It's almost like we're like on the same mental network or something. It comes down to use case. If your thing is you're into Bitcoin, well, then it's a different use case you're focusing on. But most people today don't have Bitcoin, right? Even a little bit. They don't have Ethereum or cryptocurrency or even the digital dollar. So if you're trying to solve a problem, let's say for remittance, and I can send money from here to Mexico, and I can now send money instantly to my mom in Mexico City, well, I would need to, so she has the digital money, but what the hell is she going to do with that? She has to connect that to something. So that's where the card comes in, because it's like, okay, I can spend it on a net, on my, my merchant, and then I'm good. But if, let's say, for example, the Mexican retailer, the Walmart of Mexico is starting to accept, or it's trusted within the populace, and like, okay, well, I'll take your $1,000. You won't know the difference. It will be interchangeable. You will not know the difference. It will just be a stable money, pesos or whatever, and you'll accept it as truth. And you'll always know you can pass it on to somebody else. You always know it has a stable value, and you always know that you're willing. You can use it for anything you want. Like, that's when you will have that mass adoption. And the thing that Venmo is doing right now with PayPal, or that they're planning, that's excellent, because it's going to start to bring in just a shit ton of people to basically into the industry And I think it's awesome for the overall overarching broader, like, goals of people who are behind Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. It's even if it just brought them into digital dollars, it's an on-ramp into Bitcoin and other things that will educate people.
Yeah. Just to touch on that, I actually had a phone call with PayPal literally yesterday. So they've had a test case running, pilot case for 3 years, which was withdrawal only from crypto platforms, Coinbase being the first. I think now there might be 2 others that have been on that pilot for at least a small amount of time. And now they're looking to open up to actually pay-ins and payouts. So those who don't know, PayPal, and which is now owns Venmo, have basically released news that they're going to allow. I don't think they've started already. There was actually a post on Twitter from somebody posing as PayPal saying they already launched it, but I don't think they've launched it yet. But 325 million users will have access to crypto. I believe it's going to be kind of like a Revolut situation where you can buy crypto. It's kind of like you're buying almost like a CFD. You can buy crypto, but you can't move it off the platform. Which is
honestly why I feel like it's nice that they're dipping their toe into it. But to be completely honest, like that is such an it's just such a, like, I'm not impressed.
Yeah.
I think I know why. And I'm sure you talked to the same, but we probably talked to the same banks, Daniel, to be honest. I got the list is in my head. I probably rattle them off in 10 seconds.
It's true.
But for instance, one major service provider in the UK, Currency Cloud, who underpins all of Revolut's business and all their transfers into the US and other jurisdictions, will not allow Revolut to do physically delivered crypto because they feel it falls outside the risk parameters. So for them, buying a CFD and giving that people can lose all their money on, obviously, because it still could be volatile or whatever, is somehow less risky than allowing them to take that and move it off the platform and custody it themselves. So
it makes no sense because you're actually giving, and you know what I do? I've had this conversation. I've literally had this exact conversation with regulators, regulators in New York, regulators in London. And this is what we say. It's like, okay, they say that they're consumer. I mean, and this truth is, like, a lot of the regulations were built not because they're trying to screw us. It's because somebody got screwed down the line. Regulations had to be in place to be consumer friendly, to protect consumers. I'm all about protecting consumers. Like, my political bias is very about protecting consumers. Okay, so I mean that is like an ingrained part of my. And so if you're talking to me about consumer protections, well, let's have that conversation. So I've literally said, are you telling me, because the law says, like in the UK and in Europe, that you can't? There's like a thing where if you're giving the person the ability to withdraw funds, and it's also within the New York law, drawing funds, then now you're basically opening things up for virtual currency. Now you fall under this, this certain broader law that is required.
Basically electronic money and things like that.
Yeah, and I'm saying, okay, so you're telling me that in the one breath that you're all about consumer protections, and in the same breath, you're telling me that somehow by me giving the consumer the flexibility and control to make decisions of their own is somehow, that one moment is somehow making it worse. How? If you really say and you catch them in this catch-22, and that's not intentional, but that's the truth.
That catch-22 is all over regulation. It's the same thing that says if you're not an accredited investor, you can't invest because they're protected.
Yeah, get out of here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, remove it. So just Erica, since you're still with us, you want to jump in on Vishal's question as well, which is just where do you think cryptocurrency will be in 5 years? Let's give them your perspective as well on that.
Sure. So I do want to comment though on the whole like PayPal Venmo thing. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay.
Well, yeah.
Hello. Okay. So just on the whole PayPal Venmo thing, it's very interesting because Cash App incorporated Bitcoin into their app in mid-2018. And they got about, I think it was $305 billion in Bitcoin revenue they marked on their earnings report. So because of that, it's interesting because it's not necessarily that PayPal and Venmo wanted to accept Bitcoin as this new form of money. It's like the market is saying that these are the decisions that you have to take in order to compete. So the same sentiment that you guys had with PayPal and Venmo, where it's like, you can't let people custody their own crypto. That doesn't make sense. That really gets rid of the whole innovation and makes it the same as fiat money. It makes it the same as banks. But what Cash App did is, I don't know if they've rolled it out yet, but they're now allowing people to take their crypto off of Cash App. So people are going to have to force it. I mean, this is what I love about markets, right? Is that markets get to decide. Now, in terms of where I see Bitcoin in 5 years from now, I think that, there's a lot of stuff that is up in the air right now in terms of where the world is moving, how people are going to conduct business. Are we still going to do it online? Like, are we going to be allowed to go outside anymore? All of that stuff is up in the air. But what we know for sure is that in order to make up for commerce being completely destroyed, governments around the world are printing money like never before. Right. I think it took 1 month from us to get from $25 trillion to $26 trillion. So that is insane. And for me, that makes it makes a perfect storm for Bitcoin and for other cryptocurrencies to be adopted. Now, I think it's really important for people to understand that it's not that people that are fanatics about it. It's not that we want the dollar to fail. It's not that we want fiat currencies to fail, but it's like, what other option do we have, especially for young people, where we grew up in a system to where, like, I saw my parents lose their house in the financial crisis, right? So many young people did. And so, like, to what you were saying earlier, Daniel, about like, you don't like when people say like to the moon and all that stuff. Like, I completely agree with you. Like, a lot of it is they're just positioning. But what I do appreciate about Bitcoin, especially among the younger generation, is that for me, my story was that I loved Austrian economics. I was a huge libertarian. I liked Ron Paul. I campaigned for him. And then I learned about Bitcoin. But for many people my age, what they do is they hear to the moon, they hear Lambos, they hear how can I make money? And then they go down the rabbit hole and then they learn, oh, what is the FDIC? Like, what is the Federal Reserve? Like, what are all these weird, like, Glass-Steagall stuff? Like, so I really think that the next 5 years, there's going to be adoption, but according to like Bell's law of computer classes, we are now in this portion to where it is up to the people to decide. And really, if you ask me, it's up to the millennial generation, because our average age is about 29, 28 right now. So we're finally getting to the age to where we can have wealth to invest. If we continue to push in this way, it takes people like Daniel and Kevin in like the more experienced regulatory side to make sure that things are pushing forward as well.
Just call us old. It's fine.
Wise, experienced. So yeah, I mean, it's really up to the people. So if you're a young person, I mean, do what you can to just share crypto with people. You don't have to physically give it to them, but at least talk about it. And you know, it's like the rule of 7. You hear it 7 times and then you kind of start to accept it. So we really need to make sure that we're controlling the narrative, because the other narrative is, you know, Bitcoin's a scam as Jamie Dimon buys some. So.
All right, Daniel, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to give us a little wrap up. If you want anything you want, it can be about your own company, it can be about Wirecard, throw whatever you want out there, and then I'll wrap it up as we have this beginner's session starting at the top of the hour. And I still got to thank our sponsors and all that good stuff. So go for it, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'll just say to anybody that is, you know, interested in the technology, understand that it's a phenomenal technology that can be used. When you talk about blockchain, that's like saying I own a method of transportation. It could be a helicopter, a bike, a car, an SUV, a boat. Like, a method of transportation is a very broad term. Blockchain is a very broad term. There's many kinds of blockchains, many use cases, but be very, very careful about anybody on YouTube, especially, or anyone else that's promoting a product or a car or a cryptocurrency. They're probably getting paid for it, not always, but probably getting paid for it, not telling you about it. Just be careful. And Bitcoin, you don't have to understand it. It's amazing. It's going to be great. Just sit on it, own 1 Bitcoin, and you're going to do great, is my opinion. But that's my.
So do your own research, I guess.
Do your own research, really. It's true. It's true.
Okay, well, thank you, Daniel. Everybody check out Daniel's company, Ternio. We'll see how the block site. Give me the other name.
The block card. Getblockcard.com. Getblockcard.com.
Getblockcard.com. Make sure you check out our sponsors here on Digecon: Celsius Network, Edge Wallet, SFox, OSL. Please, if you haven't subscribed to Digecon Live, make sure you give us a nice thumbs up. I get called a boomer all the time now, which pisses me off because I'm not really a boomer. I say things like thumb us up. So do that, please, because we need your support so we can continue doing these things and providing content.
So what generation are you technically in?
Well, I'm the same age as Dan, 42.
Gen X,
so I don't know,
Gen X.
like the Pepsi generation. I don't know what the hell. I don't know what generation we're in, to be honest. Not in this one. That's for sure. But yeah, anyway, thank you everybody for showing up. Thank you, Daniel, for sitting in on that little interview and our talk on Wirecard. Thank you, Erica, for coming in and asking questions. Big shout out to Blockchain Center in Miami from Erica's side. And thank you, everybody. So we'll catch you. If you want to keep going with us, just hang around for another 5 minutes. We'll come back with a beginner session. So thank you, everybody.
Bye.
All right. So yeah, thank you, guys. So.
Cool. Okay, thank you, Kevin. Amazing. That was good. Nice closing. Nice wrap it up right there. Amazing. Great. So yeah. Feel free to. We're just waiting for Jess to come on, and then feel free to take a break. If you want to pop in and ask questions in the beginner section too, you're welcome.
Okay.
I guess. I mean, we could stop the stream and then start it again, or what do you think? I already tweeted this link, so we may as well just keep it, right?
I guess you just keep it. You can always kind of obviously edit it in post, right? So you can put up 2 if you feel that makes sense. But I think I mean, people can still come in and they can, interact still. It's probably a good thing just to leave it going.
Yes. Okay, cool. So yeah, we have a little 4-minute break. We are going to be starting at exactly the top of the hour at 2:00 for the beginner section. Great job. That was amazing. One thing that I do want to mention, Digecon, similar to Cointelegraph. Cointelegraph is one of the media sponsors, media partners. But there's
Cointelegraph, forgot about you.
Yeah, we love Cointelegraph. They're making amazing content right now, so that's really cool. One thing is similar to Cointelegraph. There is no official sponsor of Digicon Live. There is no company unless we produce something specifically for them, which you will know. We do strive to bring trusted friends of the community, the tech community, but everyone is basically friends, and we do share links. Like, we're going to definitely share Daniel's link for Turn the Block card, and we want everyone on, and every guest who gives their valuable time. We are just so blessed, and we want there are obviously people that have been nominated by previous speakers or nominated by the community. So no official sponsors here, but plenty of industry friends. So we're so grateful for that. Okay, so I think yeah, if you want, Kevin, if you want to just take a break or whatever, I will be putting on some classical music, probably some Chopin, and just live out the rest of this 3 minutes, take a little breather. So you can just stop your camera if you want, as we wait for the next host to come in, and I'll try to get a nice selection of Chopin's, my favorite. How do you guys say Chopin?
Chopin. Yeah, I think that's
Chopin.
That's about right. Chopin. I think.
Chopin. Chopin.
Chopin.
What's your favorite? Do you like him? My favorite is Raindrops.
Yeah, look, when my wife was pregnant the last time, she was instructed to listen to classical music. So we went from everything to from Bach to Mozart to Chopin we went all across the and I don't know if I have a favorite, but it's definitely one of the only. It's kind of hard for any other music to kind of, I don't know, clear your mind the way classical music can.
Right.
So, because there's no words to sing along to. You don't get caught in a melody. It just lets you kind of zone out. So it's quite nice in that. Plus it's beautiful music regardless, but it really does let you kind of just go somewhere else.
Amen. Okay, so let's go somewhere else now. We're gonna go somewhere else. So hey, Jessica.
Hello, how are you? That's Kevin. I was watching the show earlier. You guys did great.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll do better on your half, but I tried.
You did a great job. Are you going to join for the second half of beginner's episode?
I'll jump in. So I guess after the first 30 minutes or so, I'll jump back in so I can chat with you and Miko, I guess.
Amazing. That sounds awesome.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck. I will turn off then, since I'm no longer needed. But I'll see you in 30 minutes.
You're always needed.
30 minutes. He's always needed. Kevin's always needed. Of course he is.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
So Cristiano, you're here with me now, and Miko should be joining any minute now, right? Or is he already here?
It's alive. If you got a little taste of Chopin Raindrops, and yeah, you just have 1 minute till you go live. Jessica, how are you?
Very good. How's everything with you in New York?
Fantastic. A little hectic, but doing really good. So without further ado, take it away.
Thank you so much. So hello, welcome to Digicon Live. We are now doing the beginners edition of DeFi Tuesdays, and I'm joined with my man Miko. Miko, how are you?
I'm very good. Nice to see you.
Good to see you again too. How's everything been since we caught up? last?
Things are kind of crazy in the world, but peaceful at home.
That's good. That's the most important thing. Peaceful at home, and then that peace can hopefully start spreading out into the world just a little bit. Fingers crossed.
Yes, ideally.
Okay, so what we're going to do today, and this is always my favorite part of the 2 hour show, is really just breaking down some of the information that's available for people that are, looking to get into the crypto space. And I'm not sure if you watched some of Kevin's hour-long show earlier, but he was talking about the issues that we have seen over the past week when it comes to Wirecard and the security elements. And I think for people that are looking to get into the space, security is such a huge obstacle mentally that they can't
Yes.
overcome with crypto. And I want to ask, first of all, if you've had an experience with that as well when you were looking to get into the space, or when you were looking to educate people about the space.
Absolutely. So, not to be overly dramatic, but, when I first started in the space, I actually did get hacked and, I did lose some coins. So, I don't want to dissuade any new people. I
Mhm.
think the best thing to do for new people actually is to play, right? And the thing that's so interesting about this space is that it's a bit different because I've got enough gray hair that I was around in the sort of first wave of the commercialization of the internet in, the early 1990s. And, we all played, like we were all like, oh, let's build a web page and let's learn HTML and, all these things, right? And I think it should be the same feeling. And I think playing is a great way to get started. And what that means is it means that you don't want to put huge amounts of assets at risk, and I think one of the biggest things that beginners need to understand is sort of like when someone else is in custody of their Bitcoin versus when they themselves are in custody. And if they themselves are in custody, then that means that you are a bank, and that has a little bit more security requirement. So you could be a very, very, very small bank. So you could be in custody of like $5 worth of Bitcoins. And if you lose them, then you could potentially have that be a really interesting lesson that was worth. You can't like, that's one way to learn. Like if you paid an instructor $5 for a course and they taught you how to secure your Bitcoins, you probably wouldn't learn it as deeply as if you lost $5,
Yes.
somehow by messing up. So, but you don't want to lose, 100,000 times that or anything.
Mm-hmm. No, but you made a fantastic point there. It's the same that you will remember something more if it has a little bit more of a painful journey for you as well. So sometimes learning the hard way. And I think as well, I know I was guilty of this in 2017 when I got into the space, was I viewed, oh, well, I'm forgetful and I'm not very good with numbers. So I don't know if I can be responsible for my own private key and my own wallet. So actually, I would prefer to leave my assets on an exchange,
Yeah.
because you still view it as that one bridge towards a neobank, which is, it still gives you this element of, well, there is a customer service number and I can tweet them if something doesn't go to plan. And that is a conception where, what would you say to people that are asking you that question?
Yeah, I think it is a perfectly reasonable first step, right? Because what we're talking about is we're talking about kind of participating, right? So, for example, to me, it's a bit like the difference between someone who built their own website from scratch using maybe some kind of open source web framework, or maybe they built it using something like WordPress, right? And then maybe someone who's trying for something even more simple would build a web page using something like Wix, and maybe somebody who's not even wanting to go that far just wants to make an account on TikTok and then make things, make some videos. So, to me, like, it's really up to you, and it's up to you as far as how deep you want to go. But, knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's true. And also, it's never too late to learn. It's never too late to learn something that might be quite scary and new. And for a lot of our newbies that might be watching as well, and I'm going to keep an eye if we do get any comments coming in, because we are going to get to those throughout the show. And we do really want to encourage people to ask these questions and have people like Miko answer them. When it comes to even a user interface of an exchange, if you're looking to buy a crypto asset, sometimes that can be really daunting. I try and explain to my girlfriends from the UK, and it is a lot to comprehend if you are a newcomer. So would you advise that the exchanges that maybe have a more simple user interface, but maybe higher commission fees, would be a good starting point?
I think that one great place to start is something like Cash App. So if you go to, Square, they have, or just go to the App Store and just look up Cash App. It's Jack Dorsey's project, and it's just a really nice thing. You can just have some, you can buy some, you can buy any amount you want. You can buy $1 and, just see what happens. It's not going to bite you. And, I think that's a great starting point. It's, obviously there are fees and, but I wouldn't obsess about it. I mean, to me, like, let's say you buy, $5 worth of Bitcoins, like, it might be, 5 cents worth of fees. So, it's not something you should obsess about. Like to the fees, people really do get obsessive about like, oh, I want to pay the least amount possible, but it's, it's not that big of a deal.
Okay, so that's a good breakdown. First of all, I think that's a really good starting point for a lot of people that are, the newbies that are looking to try and get involved. Also, when it comes to the crypto sphere, when I always prepare for these shows, I always try and reach out to people that aren't in the space yet. And I try to ask them, what are some of the things that they still don't understand? Because these are things that maybe we kind of repeat the same questions show on show, but the answers are always different depending on the guest. And one of those is, what kind of tokens then would you look at getting? What kind of crypto assets would you look at using? Because when it comes to integration and also merchants as well, some merchants accept different cryptos than others. Would you say it's a top 5 and have a mix of all of them?
Yeah, I would say the following, right? Which is that to me, like, you should really just keep growing and learning and kind of moving. And in a way, like, the thing to understand is that, you know, these are investments really, because they behave the same way as an investment, right? So, they're not banks, and they're not banks because, banks are insured, right? So they have like in the US, we have the FDIC, which kind of guarantees that you can't lose your principal, right? But the thing that's fascinating about these cryptographic assets is that they behave more like stocks, in the sense that you can lose your principal if you put money into the wrong place, right? So to me, one great resource is coinmarketcap.com, which gives you kind of a list of the biggest to the smallest, right? And the thing that I found is that since we're in these crazy internet echo chambers, one of the crazy things that can happen is people can get a very distorted sense of what's big and what's small, right? So like, because of things like advertising and targeted advertising and things. So, someone could get the impression that something, like there was a scam, called BitConnect, and if you were advertised a certain way, you could get the impression that BitConnect was bigger than Bitcoin, and so the point is if you go to a place like coinmarketcap.com, you can get a very clear sense of like how valuable each of these things are. And I would start with Bitcoin, and then like I would start doing some learning, and the number 2 one is Ether. And you should just kind of study, do a little homework. I have my own program video show called Miko Bits on YouTube. And you should just kind of get some osmosis, right? Like just listen to people talk about this and you get a feeling. But I would say that if you want to navigate, coinmarketcap.com is a great starting point to navigate, right? To get a little context, because someone's going to try to sell you some, like, what in the industry they call like S coins. It's a bad word. And they there's a lot of really obscure coins that people try to sell you and pretend they're big.
And you're right in saying the space is really crowded as well. And it can make it quite difficult, especially if you go onto YouTube and you type in like buy crypto. There's different content creators that will have advocates and favorites. Humans naturally have favorites of certain things, and whether it's sponsored or not, it can really cloud a new investor's judgment as well, just based on where you're finding and where you're looking. So I completely agree with you that sites like Mozari website is also very good when it comes to
Yeah.
looking at sizes of different tokens, just to understand the scope and a little bit of the industry and the market. And I also found looking at community sites like Medium is very good for having these blog posts where you can read a little bit more in detail about certain projects. And it seems to be a little bit more neutral than some of the, the YouTube comments. And I think because it doesn't have such a high viewership or engagement, it does make it feel a little bit more neutral as a viewer, and as someone that's reading these articles, you can come at it with a little bit of a clear perspective.
Yeah, and here's another idea if you want to kind of learn things. I'm a big fan of like books, right? So here's a book that I think would be fun, right? Is
Yeah.
Bitcoin Billionaires. Like that's a really fun book, and it's kind of it's nonfiction, but it's it's about real characters like the Winklevoss twins or like these early Bitcoiners. It's fascinating and really fun. There's another book I recommend, which is called The Bitcoin Standard, right? That's by Safedine. And this is a great another great resource. The reason why I love books is because it takes you like a half a second to write a tweet, right? And it takes you, but how long does it take you to write a book? Like, how long did it take Andreas Antonopoulos to write Mastering Bitcoin? And the question is how long did it take him to write, this is the second edition, but like, how so it's taken him like years, really, if you count all the editions, right? Because he's kept on improving it. So my point is if you really want to learn it, you should probably be learning it. You probably shouldn't be learning it from some like, person who took 10 seconds to tell you to buy some flaky coin that's only existed for like a month. Read a book.
Very good point. And I'm going to keep inviting anyone that is watching now, ask any questions to myself and Miko, and we will get round to them, because you're right, crypto books, actually, the time and the commitment that have gone into them, it is very impressive. And especially compared to, as you were saying, how short it is to make a tweet, and the crypto space can be clouded sometimes. So you've got to keep focused, and you've got to try and stay a little bit level and stay calm, because sometimes when people are pushing something that could be 10x in 2 months and you're looking to invest $50, you're thinking, wow, that's really exciting. I might look at getting this instead because this person seems to be right and they have 20,000 followers on Twitter. And that can be quite detrimental to the crypto space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we already went through a huge wave of that. And I think a lot of people got burned in it, the sort of ICO wave. And a lot of people just put their money into their, cousin's cement mixer ICO or whatever crazy scheme that they came up with. And, all that money kind of is gone, right? So to me, like, you have to look at kind of Bitcoin as the mothership, and it's sort of the most kind of trusted asset. And it's the most trusted because it's been around for like a really long time. And there's only 2 rules that you have to remember, right? The 2 rules of Bitcoin are, so it turns out that Bitcoin is based on this concept called public key cryptography. And it basically means that there's a public key and a private key. So there's only 2 laws. And the 2 laws are, the private key law is whoever owns this collection, it's a password basically, whoever owns this key, which is actually just a password, it's a really complicated, funny looking password, but whoever owns that is the true owner of the Bitcoin. Which is, so the way you can mess that up, there's 2 ways you can mess that up. It's really easy, which is, one is you can write down this key, and then you can either lose it, or you can maybe burn it, or you could get water on it or whatever. But like, if you don't have that key, then you're not the owner by definition, right? And obviously the second thing you can do wrong is you can let someone else see the key. And if they get it, then they're the owner. And if there's 2 owners, then it becomes whoever scoops it out first is the real owner, right? Because obviously it's like 2 people having keys to a house. and having it be kind of in a Wild West, right? So in a Wild West, if there's two people who have keys to a house, it's whoever's sitting inside the house with their shotgun, right? Like, and so look at it that way. And then the other one that's really simple is that the public key serves as an address that anyone is allowed to see, because the only thing you can do is you can look at the address and see what the contents of that wallet are. So it's people can see like, oh, what's inside there, which isn't that big of a deal. And then the second thing they can do with the public key is they can basically send you coins, which is like, fine, go ahead. Like that's fine. I'm happy with people doing that. And so my point is that the law of the public key or address is basically that whoever you send it to, it's pretty much that's who you that they now have the transaction. And in the Bitcoin world, those are not reversible. The only way you can reverse a transaction or cancel a transaction is to have that person volunteer to send you back the same amount, which is if it's a scam, like they're not going to do that. So anyhow, it sounds complicated, but that's pretty much what you have to know.
That's probably one of the best analogies, though, I've heard for distinguishing between private and public key. It actually is very simple. It's as simple as that. So that was very well done.
No, thank you.
If we look now at adoption moving forward, because we've talked about understanding about cryptocurrencies, where to look if you want to learn more, then that's the onboarding process. The next step is this next wave of adoption that people are talking about. And one headline story that really caught my eye in the past week since we last had these Digecon talks was the PayPal news. The PayPal news for me was huge. 325 million users of PayPal. Now they're able to buy crypto. Is this something that you think is a turning point? You know how people were talking about Libra last year. The PayPal issue, is this something that you think will be a changing direction when it comes to adoption?
Yeah, so I think that this was reported by CoinDesk, and they did claim to have 3 sources, one of which they said was a well-situated source. So it seems like a reasonably credible story. And of course, the story is that PayPal plans to enable their users to, essentially buy, sell, and otherwise use cryptographic assets, presumably Bitcoin, right? So, it's exactly as you described, right? Which is that, the population of PayPal is actually larger than the population of the United States, right? So it's a significant entity, and obviously PayPal includes like Venmo, and so it's quite a big empire. I would say the following is, amazingly enough, Libra just sort of announced the sort of rebranding of their wallet product. And so it's not called Calibra anymore. I think it's called like Nuvi or Numi or something like that. Anyhow, the thing that's kind of exciting is that this is all turning into a battle of what I would call neobanks. And if you look at the reason why I mentioned Cash App, which is Square, is that it's really almost like I would call it the perfect neobank, because a neobank only needs 2 things. It needs application development. So it needs to build an app. If you can't build an app for like a phone, like you're not a neobank, right? But if you can build an app and if you can acquire users to that app, and the app has some kind of financial capability, then you are a neobank. So why am I talking about this? So it turns out that like traditional banks are terrible at doing both of those things. So now what's happening in the financial services for normal people is that they're all swinging towards neobanks. They're swinging towards like Revolut or Chime or all of these things. And one of the they're going on the crypto side, they're going towards like Coinbases or Cash Apps. There's kind of maybe Robinhood is in there in the mix, but these are all kind of in the mode of like what I call neobanks. And that's where mass adoption will occur. So I think PayPal is in the bucket. I think Facebook is coming into the bucket, and even Apple is starting to become a neobank because they have the Apple Card. So
yes, this is true. And it makes people get used to the fact that you can't go into a physical bank and you can't receive a customer complaint. It does get used to this automation and this digital era. It's the first step. But then on the counter argument, issues like what we saw last week with Wirecard, is that something which also takes a step back? I know it's not directly a kind of a cryptocurrency as like a bank, but does this also pose the risk that sense of security is so important that banks that your mother and your grandmother use actually hold more of a sense of security for you than these newer alternatives on the market?
I think it's very generational, actually. Like if you actually look at the trust in the banking system, really, it's been very well documented that the trust in the banking system is sort of almost at an all-time low. It's dropped from, I think, 60% of surveyed people trusting banks to down to 30%. So it's really, and Wirecard is traditional financial services, and the thing that what happens is that these traditional banking institutions are basically known to collapse. The question becomes what happens to the users. And I think the big kind of edge that these traditional banks have are insurances like FDIC, and then they're backed by sort of central banks, which of course are able to kind of play extraordinary tricks, right? So the extraordinary tricks become things like the United States Federal Reserve Bank being able to buy corporate junk bonds or being able to buy anything and print more money, right? So those are the things that make people feel safer, is that these banks are kind of backed by traditional fail safes.
And I do think it is an interesting one, and I think one of the biggest questions then becomes, this next 5 years, what is going to happen, and then what's going to be so disruptive that is going to make us move to a complete movement towards more neobanks and having, do you think it is a generational wave and a current that people will eventually grow out of? You're seeing younger people, and that will be the next step to adoption, is people getting more used to an automated, as you mentioned, having your smartphone app, which is what you use to have as a banking tool.
Yeah, so I think that I can guarantee you two things. So the two things I can guarantee you is I can guarantee you that any complex system and any financial system will collapse, right? Like that's I can guarantee you that they will collapse, and it doesn't matter what system it is. That's just what they do. Historically, that's what they do, and there's a complexity theory called self-organized criticality that makes it very clear that that's just an emergent property of complex systems. So the financial system will collapse. We don't know when. It could happen in 10 minutes. It could happen in 10 years. Like, it's going to collapse. Now, are these new decentralized systems, is it that they don't collapse? Will Bitcoin collapse? That will also collapse, right? So all of these systems are known to collapse, right? So that collapse may actually propagate something. But the other thing that I can kind of give you a very strong assurance on is that open source software will win. And the reason open source software, so Bitcoin is a class of software called open source software, which developers just create on their own because they want to, and they give the software away for free, right? So open source software is going to win. And in the end, there's only beneficiaries of open source software. So there's no one else left on the field. Like, if you go to the biggest technology companies in the world, they're all huge beneficiaries of open source software. And the reason open source software will always win is that all open source software ever does is it decreases the cost of operating your business, right? So if PayPal looks at something like Bitcoin, what PayPal should be seeing is, oh, this is a way for us to do transactions much cheaper. It's much cheaper for us to use this than to build our own servers and do all of this kind of stuff, that we've been doing, right? So I guess what I'm trying to tell you all is open source financial infrastructure is inevitable and collapse is inevitable. So based on these two axioms, do your own math.
Because the math never lies.
Yes.
I know, it's very good. And I'm checking now to see if there's any questions, and we've still not had any come through, which I think is a very good sign, because it means that you're explaining everything very well and people have
That's
no
a nice
other
way
questions.
To look at it. Glass half full.
Exactly. We've got to be an optimist here. But if anyone does have any questions as well throughout the next 35 minutes, please drop them in and we will get back to you guys, because I'm under the impression this will also go onto the Digicon Live podcast as well, so people can re-listen, re-watch as they wish, which is very, very exciting. So Miko, I have to ask you now, your cryptocurrency journey this year, 2020, because for people that have been in this space for a while, now looking at things this year, how's your perception of the market moving forward? What is your take on what we've seen so far this year? Because the price of Bitcoin in particular, it did surprise a lot of people over the recent COVID disruption period, and especially the impact it had on the stock market. Is it something that actually gave you a little bit more optimism in the future of Bitcoin?
Yeah, to me, I'm pretty optimistic about it. I would say that, like, obviously none of this is financial advice, but, it does feel like this asset classes are really kind of like coiling like a spring, to kind of spring to a new higher level, and I think that a couple of the key things to watch are the number two kind of cryptocurrency on either Masari or coinmarketcap.com, is Ethereum or Ether. And Ether is doing this amazing kind of phenomenon associated with lending, right? So there's a lot of lending going on. It's called DeFi. And this thing is actually now kind of gaining this tremendous amount of steam, right? So the thing that's so interesting about what may happen next is, we may actually see a kind of a very large expansion of this. Now, these things are all very non-linear. So, we may see collapses, we may see expansions, there's definitely going to be volatility. But, I'm overall in the long term, open source is going to win. So, I feel like it's an easy bet in the long term.
So for our newbies that might be listening on YouTube or on Facebook, you mentioned DeFi there, and I think a big cryptocurrency and digital asset and digital economy phrase is bringing banking to the unbanked. It's a buzzword and a catchphrase that people hear a lot, but DeFi seems to be the elevated version of this. So maybe you can explain to our viewers, what is DeFi?
Yeah, so let me give you kind of the simple view. And the simple view is that if you look at Bitcoin, like, you should look at Bitcoin as a kind of a form of bank, right? And it's a bankless bank, right? And the thing that's so interesting about it being a bankless bank is think about it as a non-profit bank, right? So think about Bitcoin as something like a credit union, right? But the thing that Bitcoin doesn't do is it doesn't do borrowing and lending, and because Bitcoin itself doesn't do in the protocol, the Bitcoin protocol doesn't do interest. You don't get interest. It doesn't function the way people expect a bank to. Right. So the thing that's really interesting, what happened with the Ethereum blockchain, is that Ethereum has these programmable contracts, right, in them. And so what's happening in DeFi is that people are creating contracts for lending and borrowing. And so what's exciting about that is that people who hold Ether are pretty easily able to get into lending that and collecting interest. And so what happens is you end up with, sort of more centralized organizations. For example, I'm an advisor to Celsius. So Celsius.network is it's kind of a centralized crypto bank, but they give you interest, which is exciting. And people like to collect interest because the traditional banks are offering pretty close to 0% interest. Whereas these crypto banks are offering pretty close to usually 10% interest compounded. So that's a annual compounded interest rate that starts to get so-called interesting.
An interest rate that gets interesting. That was very well put. And we've got Kevin back on joining us now. Kevin, welcome back.
Hi, Jessica. Hi, Miko.
Hi, Kevin. It's good timing because I will have to bounce. I do want to give two more book recommendations though before I go, which is one of them is, if you really want to get to the heart of Bitcoin, there's an amazing book called The Book of Satoshi. I know it sounds like a religious text, but it kind of is actually. It literally is the writings of the actual Satoshi Nakamoto. So check it out. It's called The Book of Satoshi. Fantastic stuff. There's another book I recommend called The Little Bitcoin Book. And this book is a very, very short read, but it's tremendous. And it's really probably one of the best kind of simple, quick, easy resources. It's called The Little Bitcoin Book. So I highly recommend it. So, please do check these books out. These are all kind of like no BS, like reviews. I don't get any referral links or anything. I just want people to learn. And, these are really good.
Fantastic. I'm sure people will find those really helpful. Thank you so much, Miko.
Okay, bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Miko.
Okay, bye, Kevin.
So everyone has been so punctual on the show today. Everyone's been very on time.
I think I was early, actually, just to give myself a pat on the back. I think I actually
An extra one, because the one wasn't enough. So I was listening to the show that you did with Daniel, and you also had the woman from Bitcoin Miami on. And it was really, really interesting. And actually from the discussions that you guys were having, I was then jotting down some questions for the Explain to Mama segment of the show, which I think Christiana might join in for, we'll see. Because so many questions pop up when I am discussing with my mother or some of my friends, and I'm sure it's the exact same for you. And they are recurring questions, but they are questions that do need to be kind of answered and underlined a few times to people that are new to the space, because the misconceptions there can be completely off-putting for newbies. So I'm going to give you some as a little bit of a challenge if you're ready.
Ready, go for it.
Well, the first one comes from the Wirecard saga that you were discussing. And this kind of pulls the carpet from under everyone's feet, because if suddenly your bank card doesn't work, that's kind of terrifying. And that kind of goes through to crypto. So the biggest question is my crypto secure?
I guess the way to answer that would be to say there really is no direct correlation between your bank card not working and your crypto. Having said that, if you're using a card provider that also is some type of crypto exchange, or you've provided some centralized company with, let's say, your Bitcoin, and then you have a card that you can access a value more or less of the same value that you hold in Bitcoin in terms of euro or dollars or whatever, then yeah, obviously the same pain points arise as if you were just holding fiat currency. And I talked about this with Daniel, just in the extent that, look, I own a similar company. We also have debit cards. It's kind of like, it's difficult to take that jump for many people from things they understand to things they don't understand or may be afraid of. So the vast majority of the world doesn't understand crypto, but the vast majority of the world understands a debit card, a virtual credit card, or some type of, M-Pesa, PayPal. They understand those things, or at least, to be honest, they don't understand them, but they have they believe they do, right? So they have this misconception that they know how it works. And with Bitcoin, they have a misconception that it makes any difference whether they know how it works or not. So it scares them, and they revert back. So companies tend to provide the debit cards because it's kind of the first step to get someone to start using crypto painlessly. So how do you? Well, it's the age-old thing. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? If you need a card for your everyday life, absolutely need a card. Don't have all the money sitting on the card all the time. So if you're using something like some type of crypto, like the block card, for example, and you have the option to just hold your capital in Bitcoin and move a small amount on the card when you need it, do it that way. This way, no fault of the owner of the block card, for example, if their own provider were to go belly up. This way, you still have access to the majority of your capital in Bitcoin or any other currency for that matter, and you can move it, to another payment vehicle should you need to. So that caveat of don't put your eggs in one basket literally works for, everything in finance, I think, including cards, as we've seen.
And it's a really interesting point because, and if anyone is watching and they do have any questions during this discussion, drop them in and we will get round to them. And Christiana's just popped on in.
Like
Hello.
Houdini. That was amazing. It was like she popped in and then went down and out, and it was quite nice.
We were all speechless. We were like, what is she going to do next? And it goes on to my next question that I just wanted to ask you, Kevin. So if you were going to have, because you've kind of given the indication here that if I was going to use my cryptocurrency to buy a cup of coffee, I would have a different storage method for this kind of crypto that is, day-to-day use that I'm going to drift in and out of. It's not my life savings. To if I was going to buy a brand new sports car. And these would be different wallets or different methods of storage for them. And I think that is something which people aren't really used to getting their head around. Is that something that you would suggest?
Sure. It's the same reason why in your banking app, or even before apps existed, your bank account, you had a savings account and a checking account, right? Most of the time, I remember, when I got my first account, a passbook account, Jesus Christ, you had a little book where you had to keep all your records, when you were a kid. And even then you had a savings account and then like the money I can spend account. And that does two things. That helps people save money, because many people, if all the money is in one place, they're going to spend it. And second, yes, if obviously if you're at the same institution, it's a bit different for banks. If the bank goes under, well, your savings and your checking account are gone, right? And it's the same bank. But in terms of crypto, you can have, and we talk about wallets, I think a distinction should be made just for people that are kind of new to crypto, and that wallet and address are two very different things. So the address, which is that crazy, hash, the 1762388WEW, whatever, that's your address, right? That's the address that exists somewhere on the blockchain. A wallet is generally a piece of software or a piece of hardware where you store addresses where your actual crypto resides. So you can definitely choose in crypto, which is much different than traditional finance. You can put, a small amount of crypto on an address that's connected maybe to a software wallet that you can use and make contactless payments every day, right? So you're going to go, you'll spend about 50 pounds today, 50 euros, $50. You move that from maybe another address that's stored maybe on a hardware wallet, or maybe you have it on some other type of offline air-gapped kind of wallet, one of those, cards they sell where you can have yours, you put it in a safe. Whatever your method is kind of meaningless in this scenario, but you can put the majority in a place where people don't have access to it readily, and you move, from one to the other. And that's probably the best way. Those things with traditional banks or markets are difficult to do, because if you have multiple bank accounts, you got to log into one, you got to move the funds, and even then, it may take time to get the money there, et cetera. And in crypto, you can generally be your own bank, like they say, and store most of your capital somewhere where it's even difficult if it's hard for you to get access to it, meaning you have to take out your hardware wallet, you got to connect it, you got to connect to the internet, that means it's hard for a thief to get access to it too. That's actually a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing.
Very, very good. Now, Christian, I'm going to direct a question to you now, because I think now we're going to get a little bit more into the questions. And guys, feel free to kind of bounce them back as well. But if you have any questions that maybe you get asked, you can jot them back to us. But Christian, one question that someone actually asked me today, they said, if I die, what happens to my crypto?
It dies with you. So does your mansion, so does your Lambo, and so does everything else. Okay, I mean, it doesn't matter what happens to your crypto. But yes, and I would say it's a question you should ask yourself. And people don't like to. Okay, just like they don't want to or need to know how to code HTML to make the internet work. A lot of people don't like to talk about death. They do not like to talk about death. I think that's something why this whole coronavirus thing, the boogeyman is out there. I think there's just news right now, there's a second virus or something happening in China. All right, so that uncertainty, people don't like that. People don't like the question of death, right? But I do believe, and this is not any kind of financial or whatever kind of advice I'm not allowed to say. It's not that. It's just, I do think it's important to think about your will. Things happen all the time. Think about your will, think about your assets, and it should be in the hands of someone who you trust, or at least a notarized user, authorized person that can take care of those assets, right? And if it's whether it's in a hard, and I want to try to use really simple terms, because Kevin, you just said a bunch of great stuff, but there was like air wallets, hot wallets, like he's cooking it on a stove, But I do think it's important for people to be aware, not even of their crypto asset, of their regular assets, And I did know someone popped in.
If I could just put a heat on that, just real quick, from a digital perspective, right? So, the movies you own on Amazon or whatever you're using to buy movies, when you buy them online, when you die, you actually can't give those to anybody. They remain property of the company from which you bought them. So there are digital assets, like movies, for example, that you can't actually give to anybody. You die and they're gone.
What?
The big difference here is that obviously with a will, or even not having a will, right? Somebody knows where that hardware wallet is and where to get the seed phrase. They can gain access to those assets. So you don't even need a lawyer. I think, lawyers are great. I have friends that are lawyers. I have a colleague I have a co-founder that's a lawyer. I don't want to talk bad about lawyers, at least not right now. But the great thing about decentralization is you get rid of that centralization of power as well, and that means we need less lawyers. So that's probably a good thing, to be honest. So
Unless you're Kevin's friend that's a lawyer, and then it's probably not a good thing for you.
no, my friend should always be a lawyer, and he'll maintain his practice. That's fine. But everybody else.
Everyone else can go. He can stay.
Yeah.
So what about the question then, is Bitcoin used for money laundering? And I don't want to categorize Bitcoin here, but cryptocurrencies in general.
Yes, but not smartly. So I think, look, cash is used for money laundering, diamonds are used for money laundering, art is used for money laundering. There's a million things that people use to launder money. In fact, anything that has a value to it. I'm sure somebody has probably laundered money using prize-winning Pomeranians.
I was going to say wild cats, so we're on the same.
So we're on the same wavelength, right? Look, money laundering is going to happen because there's money to be laundered and there's criminal activity. The point is that it's pretty easy to get caught laundering money through most crypto, especially Bitcoin. In fact, they've caught already quite a number of money launderers and just illegal funds. They just caught, I think some type of illicit ring of data sharing through crypto. So if you're a good money launderer, you'd probably choose cash because it's much easier and it's anonymous. Whereas most blockchain is pseudo-anonymous, which means you're not actually anonymous. You leave a trail and a trail you can't erase. And eventually that trail will lead back to you. So is it used? Yes. In fact, I famously, when I own a crypto exchange, the first time we had to go through any regulatory filings, we used a third-party system to run a data sweep on all our transactions. And if you literally we took transactions from our own system and then just literally found transaction hashes on the internet and put them into the system. And within 30 jumps, so you start from one transaction, you go to that transaction, whoever worked with that transaction, whoever had a transaction with that address, you make this big matrix. Within 30 jumps, about 90% of all Bitcoin touches Silk Road. So that tells you that one of the reasons why Bitcoin became popular is because initially it was almost entirely used by criminals. But so were credit cards, so were checks, so was the SWIFT network. I mean, when a new way to move money seamlessly across border emerges, criminals use it first. So that doesn't really surprise. And any regulator or any kind of person in the know that kind of uses that as an excuse either doesn't know the history or is just trying to make a point, but not making a really great point, why they're trying to. So yes, money launderers use Bitcoin just like they use cash and many other, but it's much more difficult with Bitcoin. And the percentage of people that use Bitcoin for money laundering is not even close to the percentage of people and the percentage of money laundered with cash.
And just to add to that, I think the cryptocurrencies wouldn't have got to the position that it was today if it didn't have this initial use case, which was Silk Road. But this is the exact same with, when the internet, there was a huge surge in pornography. And then people, it was.
Who knew?
I know, what is that?
I've never looked at that stuff in my life. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know.
But initially, when a new technology or a new tool comes in, a lot of the adoption is maybe not used in the right way, but it does help people then suddenly work out the good and the beneficial ways to use the system. And I think that's the same for crypto. I don't think it would have been as adopted or as traded for sure if there wasn't the Silk Road platform.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't have. Obviously, price drives a lot of eyes to Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin was still 10 cents, it definitely wouldn't have the market cap it has, and it wouldn't be on the news, and nobody would generally care about it. Regulators wouldn't have done anything to try and regulate it. The institutions wouldn't be using it. So yes, and the reason why price went up is because of usage. And yes, almost all the original usage somehow within a few jumps here or there was tied to probably some type of, and again, when we say illegal activity, it's quite broad, right? Because if you use Bitcoin to not pay tax, that's illegal according to whoever you're supposed to pay tax to. We might not think it's right, or we're against taxes, or whatever your personal idea may be, but it's still illegal, right? If you send money cross-border, or you send money into a country like Iran, for example, to a family member, that would be illegal in the traditional financial system. So, I mean, do you really consider that illegal? Well, that's up to your own morals, I guess, and what you feel illegal is. But when you think about that, moving money in and out of Argentina, there's caps of how much money people can move in and out of Argentina, but they do it with Bitcoin. They go China, same thing. one of the biggest pushes in 2017 was people evading the $50,000, well, equivalent cap where they could move currency out of the country. So illegal, all tied to the growth of Bitcoin, for sure.
So now the next question is, and this is, I think, Christiana, I think you're going to answer this in quite a holistic way, is will digital assets make me rich?
Well, I think you're the only person who can make you rich, okay? Assets cannot make you rich. Even a fool could get rich with the right strategy. That requires discipline, that requires knowledge, and that's not the things that most people have, just to be quite. And what I think is diversify your portfolio. And this is not financial advice, but in general, you know, what do you do when you, you know, decide what your diet is going to be, right? If you want to have a balanced diet, you try to find the good products, the organic products. You try to find a balance, or maybe you're a vegetarian, but you still got to get your protein. So you get beans or you get tofu, right? So in the same sense, you know, these are just tools, right? These are tools. These are cryptographic digital money, right? And then you're heading towards make you rich. Maybe that person is talking about, can I trade it? Can I trade it and flip it like pancakes and make a profit? You know, I'm not a day trader. I know Kevin has that background. That's not my skill set. I prefer to do something more like taking a percentage of my income instead of taking the percentage that I know that I don't need at the moment. It's not an emergency. So let's give an example. Let's say 10% of all of my income, I can just keep buying more crypto, right? And then it's called like the averaging. After a time period, you know, I might have bought it at 4K, I might have bought it at 6K. After a while, that's going to average out. And if you look at the history, looking at data and facts, right? How much did Bitcoin start, and how much did it end? How is it today? And for the most part, anyone who's a hodler, and maybe, you know, we can explain what hodl is, but if you just buy crypto and hold it, then you're usually winning over the years if you're patient enough. And that's why it really depends on your risk tolerance. So yeah, you can. I saw on the news these young children were selling lemonade and raising money for charity for coronavirus, relief. They're making money with lemonade. So it's the tools you have and the decisions you do with it.
That was very nicely put. So Kevin, I want to ask if you have anything to add to the infamous question that people will say is, will cryptocurrencies and digital assets make me rich?
So will they? I don't know if I can answer that. Could they? Yes. I've met a lot of people, not just in crypto, but that everybody's met a guy or a girl, and you look at them and they're talking and they talk about their success and you think, really? This guy? Like, really? This guy did that? You know, this guy made all this. You almost get like pissed off about yourself. You know, it's like you're looking at somebody that totally shouldn't have made what they made and they did. The moral of that story is anybody can get rich doing almost anything. And just like everything in life, I think it's just people who give up don't succeed. So if you don't give up, eventually you have to succeed. That's literally the law of averages, right? You just keep going. You're going. So can crypto make you rich? Yes. Will it? Well, that depends again on what on kind of what Christiana said, is that yes, some people can take lemons and become rich. Others, you give them some lemons and they don't even know how to make lemonade, you know, and they die of thirst, right? So it kind of depends who you are, what tools you have, and whether you give up or not. Because like I said, I've met people that really, I don't know, in any logical society would not be well off or have success, but somehow they got there, right? And it's not because they're better than us, smarter than us, faster than us, more agile. It's because they simply didn't give up. So that's it. If you're a trader, keep trading. You'll lose. Yep. But keep going. If you give up, you'll never win. Right? It's like the lottery, right? You can't win if you don't play. That's it.
Nice. I like that.
Someone said to me once, a very wise gentleman that has a trading algorithm platform, and he said, you're not an official cryptocurrency trader until you've lost 50%. And I'm sure for our beginners, they're probably terrified at that, but it's just because the market is quite volatile as well. Changes do fluctuate, and I think everyone that's been in the space for 2 to 3 years have witnessed a market cycle that have been, even March of this year, things are a little bit of a movement and momentum. So maybe Kevin, I'm going to go to you now and ask, because we've got 10 minutes left. So guys, if anyone is watching on Facebook or YouTube or on the Q&A on Zoom, drop a question in and I'll direct it to our team. But volatility, how would you explain that to someone that's looking to get into the space? They've only ever had fiat currencies, so they've never even considered that currencies can change. Maybe
Sure.
they've never even left the country, so they've never had to exchange their currency at an airport. How would you explain it?
Yeah, so I come from currency trading, right? So that's my background. So I would say that I've seen volatility in those markets that can outpace crypto many, many times. So I think it's not just, and well, to be honest, look at stocks in the past couple weeks or months. Volatility on stock, Wirecard stock, since we started talking about Wirecard, that's some of the most volatility I've ever seen in my trading career. So volatility is not just crypto related. But look, without volatility, there's no real opportunity. So it's the same type of thing you would tell anybody. If you ever talk to an old guy, I guess I'm going to say it now, so that makes me an old guy. But you can't really have any reward without risk, right? Business is all about risk. You calculate your risk. Your reward is always based on the amount of risk you take. People that take larger risks may lose it all, but they also may come out with the biggest gains. So the problem with trading, or the major problem, look, you don't need to be smart to be a trader. You don't need to understand what indicators are. You don't even need an indicator. You don't need Fibonacci. You don't need Elliott wave. I could teach you how to chart and show you all these great things that in reality are just hogwash. They are literally just the study of the same thing you look at when you look at a price chart, except it's shown in a different way. Anybody that tells you need those things doesn't really know how to trade. What you need is the ability to sit on your hands. And when you make a decision, you actually stay with the decision even when you're wrong. The biggest thing about volatility is when volatility goes against someone, they're on what we like to call the be back bus. Oh, he's coming back. It'll come back. Oh yeah, down 10%, it's coming back. Down 15%. Oh, and then they'll start charting like a Fibonacci sequence or a retracement or whatever, the 200 EMA moving average, whatever is in their toolbox. And they'll say, well, it's close to that. Oh, it's almost there. It's going to bounce there. And then it keeps going. Now they're down 30%, 45%, 60%, 90%, stopped out and gone. And they're still waiting for the price to come back, right? But when it goes the other way and people make money, the immediate kind of urge of cashing out, because they may have somebody next to them, husband, wife, significant other, trolls on Twitter that say, you're up 2%, cash out, cash out, cash out. That's money, cash out, that's money. Take the money, take the profit, right? So what happens is they cash out of profits too early and they let losers ride forever. To be a successful trader, you need volatility, one. If there's no volatility in the market, what are you doing? You're just watching paint dry. It's pretty hard to make money when prices don't move. All you need to understand is that you need to calculate your risk, and you follow that risk plan regardless. You lose 10 times in a row, follow your risk plan. You lose 20 times in a row, you follow your risk plan. Your risk plan should be stable enough so that you can lose 50 times in a row and only maybe lose, 10%, 8%, 7% of your portfolio. If you're trading more than that, you're over trading. And even though those wins may feel great, you will blow out at one point or another, guaranteed. So it's all about risk management. And you need to separate human nature, which is difficult, and just follow the plan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to chime in on that. So actually, Cuomo from New York City, he said that. He said, I raise my daughters and I teach them two things: risk, reward. If you want to have that cookie, think about the risk and think about the reward. If you want to sneak out of the house and go meet your boyfriend, think about the risk and think about the reward. So the choice is.
It better be worth it.
It better be worth it. So I love that. I love that and thinking about that. The other cool thing, I've been listening to this poker strategy on decision making, and I think that's really interesting. You were saying stick to your guns, stick to your plan, right? And I also think it's pretty interesting to think of every decision as a strategy, like analyzing the risk and reward, and going through to your strategy based on the potential outcome, the uncertainty, because in reality, everything is uncertain. We might have thought before Corona that things were stable. They were never stable. Everything is uncertain. it's just an illusion, I guess, right?
Look, even when you're a baby, you learn about risk and reward, right? When you're a kid, the first time you lie to your parent, white lie, whatever. Did you break this? No. Your brain is immediately calculating, well, if I say yes, then I might get punished. If I say no, I got a 35% chance of maybe walking out of here, with nothing happening. So the calculation of risk and reward, man, is built in since you're born. The problem is as we get older, we kind of forget. The older you get, and I can tell you this, when I was 20, I would trade things that right now I wouldn't even touch, right? So that's why the majority of crypto traders, the guys who call themselves crypto traders, are young, because you need to take immense risk it's very hard to calculate the risk on crypto. People say that they can, but to be honest, any crypto can go to zero at any moment, because there really is so much, the liquidity is so thin, even in Bitcoin. It's very easy. A real whale can come in and wipe anything off the chart pretty easily. So especially with a synthetic market. So it's the question that's why older traders, it's difficult for older traders, man, because we've been through all the risk. We've already made the 50% loss. I've seen 90% losses, where you can't eat for 3 days. And then, this happens. This right here happens. And that happens from, all those memes you see with the guy going nuts and the red candle just keeps going, goes through his computer, goes to the neighbor's house, whatever. Yeah, I've been there, like in real life. I've seen it happen, and it's brutal. And it's hard to get yourself back up. But that's what trading is about, man. It's about getting smacked around and just, keep on going.
Our poor beginners that have tuned in for this episode, honestly, it's not as scary as losing all your hair and fire and 50.
Well, holding is not scary. If you can buy and hold, that's the easiest strategy. And so far for the last 10 years, it's worked great. Right?
So what we're going to do now as a little summary, I think I'm going to ask each of you, and I'm going to join in as well, one tip that you can give some of our beginners that might be watching when it comes to crypto trading. One lesson that maybe you've learned or you wish someone told you. Kevin, I'm going to start with you because I feel like yours is probably going to be the funniest.
One tip. All right. I think I've given a few already, but so to new people, so don't go around chasing the moon. Don't take tips off of Twitter. And don't even worry about it if you can't read a chart, right? I can tell you, you don't even have to look at a chart to understand that in the past 10 years, the only asset that has been performing in crypto constantly over dollar cost averaging or any other very easy strategy, like put 10 euros a week into an account, is Bitcoin. So when you start, don't worry about altcoins. Don't worry about getting into micro caps. Don't worry about reading charts and following, all these different traders. Buy Bitcoin, buy it slow, buy what you can afford to lose, and don't watch price. That's it. Step back.
Good. That was nice. Christiana?
Okay. So I would say do your research. Do your research, explore, experiment, but mainly start off, and I would say start off easy, take it step by step, have patience with yourself. Even myself, I was and it's gotta be quick, but I was basically a digital strategist and working with startups, emerging technology, all these interesting roles that I had, but I didn't understand Bitcoin straight away. At first I was like, oh, that's just a speculative thing, kind of like stocks. I'm not a trader, forget it, right? And then I started to slowly learn the deeper implications and the revolution that is decentralized finance. So I would say have patience with yourself, learn into it, and again, just start off with buying some, right? And I usually recommend, we have a wonderful community friend, Edge Wallet. We'll have the links. Get an Edge Wallet, buy a little bit, or another option is there's also GBTC, which you could start buying it in your retirement account and not have to worry about taxes, not have to worry about anything, and play with it inside your retirement account. So for United States, I don't know how it is in Europe or other places, but that's it. So explore, take your time and be patient with yourself.
That's really good. And I think enjoy it as well, because if you put maybe 20 to 50 years in, when you then read or try and educate yourself on crypto and on digital assets, you're a little bit more motivated to understand because you do have some monetary investment. So it is a little bit exciting, but completely agree. Don't put in more than you can afford. and also have an ideal time frame set out. So if you know that, okay, I want to dabble with this for 6 months, but then I'm moving apartments, so I know that I need to cash out, be really aware of your own time frames, because what your friend can put in or the longer your friend can hold in the market will be different to you, and that's fine. Try not to match up and sign it to something that will set you out. But I think we've covered quite a lot now. So guys, thank you so much. We're right on time. Christiana, we've been so punctual today. Are you impressed?
I'm very proud of you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your amazing hosting, both of you.
Thank you. Kevin did amazing.
Well, thank you, Jessica. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Great. Awesome.
Amazing. Guys, thank you so much. We'll catch up again next week too.
Sure.
Okay.
Cheers. Bye,
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.